Good morning and welcome to this week's Grow, where we gather to recharge, organize, and work here as members of MWEG. We are glad that you're with us today or watching this recording. Today, we are going to be talking about women making peace and the Abortion Talks film screening that we did a couple weeks ago in Utah. We did one in Salt Lake City at the University of Utah and one in Orem at Utah Valley University. We're just going to kind of give a recap of what that event was. You may have seen some information about that posted in the discussion group. And we are going to talk about ways that if you are interested in possibly seeing a screening of that film and being part of the conversation of how you can find resources for that. So today we have Jennifer Walker-Thomas, who is a co-executive director here at MWEG, and we are so glad that she's with us. So I'm going to turn the time over to Jen.
Hi. I'm enthusiastic about this topic and enthusiastic about this particular movie. So I'm excited to share with you the things that we have been doing. So as Rachel said, she was able to join me and we were able to hold 2 in-person screenings of the Abortion Talks last week last week, a week and a half ago in Utah. And first, we want to tell you why we've done that, why we've chosen to share this movie. It is not, in fact, a film about an abortion, but it is a film about peacemaking. And since President Nelson's call in April, MWEG has been really considering ways that we can meaningfully help you become peacemakers. And we recognize that this is not intuitive. There's not much in our culture, in our society that actually trains us how to do this, quite the opposite, particularly now. And so for us to become peacemakers, it's going to require concerted effort on our part. We're going to have to really think about what that means and figure out what are the skills to do it. Peacemaking can sound scary and it can sound impossible, but I can just speak from my own experience that even if one is not an intuitive peacemaker, one can, in fact, learn skills and practice them in such a way that in moments of tension and crisis, they actually rise to the surface and it sort of becomes the way you respond. And I want to also just emphasize from my experience that I don't know quite how to articulate this, that no matter how many clever words you use and no matter how much you feel like you have control of a conversation or feel like you can win a conversation, using peacemaking tools in a difficult conversation actually is far more empowering than any other way to approach those conversations. And if we do them, from my own experience, I've seen that when I use those tools and I approach conversations with that particular lens, I end up leaving conversations feeling much more control over myself, much more control over how the situation went. I feel better in my heart and soul, regardless of how things came out. And I feel like I've exercised my agency in productive and meaningful ways. And so that is what made me a convert to peacemaking. It wasn't that it meant that I could win more or that I could accomplish more, but it meant that the process really felt to me much more true to what I was hoping to be as a person, as a disciple and a person of integrity. So that's my personal witness to what we're trying to accomplish here. And now I just kind of want to share a little bit about the film. So, and why we've chosen to use this. The Abortion Talks film, like I said, is not about abortion, but it is actually about conversations. And it's about conversations with people who you not only disagree with, but the likelihood of you ever agreeing with is very, very small. It's not about coming to a resolution either. It's about a process and learning to engage in that process in a way that reduces violence and anger and contention in our society. And just basically, quickly, it's the narrative of 2 groups of women who in Boston in the 90s, following some pretty tragic violence that happened in abortion clinics and resulted in the death of 2 young women. The groups on opposing side of the issue were brought together by a mediator and agreed to have a handful, I think it was originally 5 conversations with one another to try to see if they could figure out a way to reduce the escalating violence and tensions in their society. ultimately, these women ended up meeting for 5 years. And the story of how that happened and the result of it is what this movie is about. So what we chose to do was show this movie because we acknowledge as an organization that, just like I said, peacemaking isn't intuitive, and we're not seeing tons of examples of it in our world right now. And so if you don't see examples of something, if it's not intuitive, and if someone isn't giving you skills, then it's really hard, even if you believe I want to be a peacemaker, to know exactly how you're going to accomplish this. So what we tried to do with this event was at least deal with 2 of those issues. 1, to show women an example of what it looked like, and then 2, provide them with a set of skills that they could use to have peaceful conversations in their own society. So I don't want to keep you a super long amount of time today, but I do want to share just a couple of things with you. So the first is, before we talk about maybe some of those skills, and I give you a highlight of what we learned in that conversation with Brandon from Unify, I just want to read a quote from Eva Weitzman, who wrote a beautiful treatise on peacemaking in the early days of MWEG, and this is there in our portal, and it's a great place to find it. She says there are 2 ways to interpret the concept of making peace. The first is to avoid conflict, to acquiesce, as in, I've made peace with the fact that you and I disagree, or I have made peace with the way things are. After this manner, peace is just maintained by keeping quiet, by biting one's tongue, by falling in line, by going gently into that good night. But this is not the kind of peace I want to make, she says. When I make peace, I want to build it from the ground up if I have to, like a first responder who runs towards the flames or a soldier who runs toward the good fight. I believe a peacemaker is the sort of person who runs toward conflict and builds peace with her words and her own 2 hands. To be a peacemaker is to be a creator, a visionary, a champion. Peacemaking is not for the faint of heart. So I just think that quote so beautifully sets the tone of what we're trying to accomplish here at MWEG. And in that, I just now want to share with you really briefly an example of what we learned. One of the things that we learned in our conversations with Brandon, one of the techniques that she offered to us, that there are many techniques to be a peacemaker, but this is just one technique that she offered, particularly effective in situations where you feel like this is a human being that matters to you or with whom you have shared values. There are different techniques for being a peacemaker in a situation where you're not super invested and all you're trying to diffuse violence and de-escalate things. But this is one that you can use in situations where the person matters to you and you believe you share some values. So the first Brandon encouraged us to do is to listen to the other person with no judgment. It's key that you put yourself in a position where you're willing and able to listen to the other person and hear what they're saying to you. And ways that you can do that is by modeling physical openness. It's really easy when someone's telling you something that you don't want to hear to kind of tense up with your body or communicate to them that you're sort of closed off. One of the ways to instantly be a peacemaker is to check yourself and figure out how you're sitting. Am I looking at you? Am I looking you in the eye? Am I engaging with the person? And modeling to them a physical openness that hopefully communicates to them that I have mental openness. The second is to make sure that you're listening such that you are in capacity at a certain point when they take a pause or stop to be able to summarize what they said and repeat back to them. So often, so many of us make the mistake, again, me, of listening with the intent to catalog what they're saying so that I can either refute it, so that I can marshal my facts and say, oh no, this is why you're wrong, or so that I can, bring my best argument to the table, philosophical, moral, spiritual, or otherwise. But what Brandon was telling us is that the first thing peacemakers do is they really make sure that they are not at the center of the conversation, but that the other person is. And so so if I were acting as a peacemaker, I would then model back what they said, repeat it, and then ask if I have understood correctly and give them space to correct me if in fact I haven't. So then the next question is, the next option is to ask another question. And so you've repeated back what they've said to you. And boy, this is hard if what I'm going to just acknowledge, this is super hard if what they're saying to you, you personally think is nonsense, garbage, or harmful. That is so hard, you guys. I just want to acknowledge that when we feel that someone is saying something that we either viscerally don't like or we think is viscerally bad, it's really hard to enter into this space with peace, but it's critical that we do that. So then what you can do is ask questions that help you understand. First, they've told you what they think. And now the questions you're going to ask help to unearth the values that underlie what they think. So you're going to say things like, tell me a little bit more about why you feel this particular way. Or a really good one is how you feel, it sounds like you feel very strongly about this. Is this because it affects someone you love? Or, tell me how this matters to someone that is, that you value or matters to you. So you just need to find questions that allow you to inhabit the space of the other person and have them sense that you're really trying to understand not just their position, but what's driving their position. Why does this matter to them? And once you've got that question, Brandon suggests something that is also counterintuitive, perhaps for all of us, but particularly for chatterboxes like me, and that is to just let there be a little bit of silence. And that silence, both someone has just shared with you something that's really valuable to them, and that can also be an escalating thing for them. But by allowing some silence to sit, again, that de-escalates the situation, and it allows you as the listener a moment to kind of think and pause. And you can do that. There's a point at which silence becomes crazy awkward, and you can even signal, this is very interesting information to me. Just give me a second to think about it. And that also signals real respect to the other person. Okay, the third thing that Brandon from Unify encouraged us to do was to share a story, which allows us to connect with the other person. So you want to articulate a shared value. If I have just been having a conversation with someone and they share with me that their particular position is grounded in concern, say about the welfare of their children, then what I can do is not counteracting them, but I want to share a story or personal experience that indicates to them that I share that value and that I'm also concerned for my children or other people's children. So then we can start to, without arguing, show that we have sort of a common value. And often, you guys, this is going to require us to be a little bit vulnerable. And that vulnerability actually brings with it a little bit of power. And I don't mean in a coercive, manipulative way, but when we're vulnerable with other people, we diffuse them a little bit, and we also show them that we care enough about them to bring a piece of our true self to the conversation. And that is very powerful in human relationships. Okay, once you've done that, you ask if maybe your person would be willing to do this, say the same. You say, I hear that this matters to you. Can you share with me an experience that, a story from your life that kind of tells me how caring for your children matters to you. The goal right here is to have found some common ground. And again, this exercise then stops here. You're not necessarily trying to convince someone or use the information you've just gained to kind of force their hand, but you are using it to have this conversation stop there, where you both are standing on some common ground of shared values. And this is particularly important if this is someone that matters to you personally. So I just want to emphasize that it's okay as a peacemaker to then leave that conversation there. Doesn't mean you're not coming back to the person. It doesn't mean that you won't come back to the hard conversation later, but you've laid some groundwork where that person understands that you hear them, that you see them, that you care more about them than you care about the issue. that you've been vulnerable with them and shared with them some of your kind of core beliefs, and you've allowed them to do the same with you. And that is a really great place to kind of take a pause. And then if you do need to regroup, and if you think it's not wise to ever bring up this topic again with that person, that might be the case, but you haven't left each other in really contentious, fraught circumstances. You've left with that bond intact and an understanding of the things that you share. I'm going to put you on the spot here, Rachel. I know you were also there. Was there anything else from that exercise that jumped out at you personally, or anything you experienced? I don't even know if you got to do it because you were running around doing all the jobs, but is there anything that I guess in that speaks to you?
You know what? I can say some of the feedback. This is not me personally, but some of the feedback when we were asked, so for people that weren't there, they were asked to take 3 minutes and just turn to a person next to them.
Yeah.
Now there were so many women there that didn't know each other and didn't come with someone or didn't bring a friend. And so they turned to a partner, or they turned to the person in the seat closest to them and just talked to him for 3 minutes, just maybe gave their thoughts on the film or whatever it was. And they didn't know anything about that person. But
yeah, they went through this process, right?
Yeah, they went through the process, and it was so great to hear how much it changed them. 3 minutes changed these people, and said, wow, I felt a connection with a person I didn't even know, and found that we had a lot in common, and we didn't know each other in just such a short amount of time. And this was after they had watched these other women who had such differing opinions and feelings on the topic of abortion, have really hard conversations, like you said, over several years. And so it was really moving to a lot of people in the audience, and to me, to hear them, give their thoughts on how they were feeling in the moment of having just practiced for such a short amount of time, these short steps of listening and learning and connecting. And I think that's a lot of what the film is about, is connecting our humanity instead of fighting and battling against our differences, because what those women found is that they had more in common than they ever thought.
Yeah.
And it shocked them. So, and I think that's kind of what we find, is that we have so much more in common with our neighbors, and we have so much more in common with, well, obviously our family members, that we might differ on topics, but that we are so connected, like down to our humanity. And I love that idea that the film gives. So
I love that too. And I'll say that, the way Brandon started this process was, she said, you're supposed to say something, so I would turn to my neighbor and first say something that has stopped a conversation in its tracks, like something that someone said that I was like, wait, what? And then go through this process and explain, and hear them out. So one thing that was super interesting to me is, in one of the 2 times that I did that, I was in a room full of people that I, had come and as peacemakers, and I would have thought had a lot in common with me. And one of the 2 times I did that, someone said something that stopped, a conversation in the tracks that they had said. And I'm like, yeah, I know why, because that stops this conversation in the tracks for me too, right? Like, I'm like, really, what? And but it was really wonderful for me to immediately be pushed into this process. I couldn't capture that person right there in that moment, but I could hear about why that person thought that, what had led them to it, what their values were. And at the other end of it, I still didn't necessarily agree with their decision, but I wasn't frozen in that first moment, which it could have been so easy for me to listen to what she was saying to me, be frozen in that moment, to be slightly horrified by what she was saying, and be like, oh, wow, that's my takeaway from you as a person. But instead, it was exactly the opposite. I still didn't agree with her at the end of the conversation, but I understood why she did what she did. I understood what in her experience had led her to that conclusion. And it gave me all sorts of space to see her as a whole person, to understand how she'd come to that experience, to understand what was driving her towards that, all of which miraculously in 4 minutes allowed me to mentally have her exist with that idea in space, sitting right next to me that was in conflict. I don't know how to describe it any better than that. We had two conflicting ideas, and yet having gone through this process, just suddenly I was like, I'm really comfortable with her existing in space right next to me, holding this idea that I disagree with, which I
Yeah,
would not have been if we hadn't gone through that exercise.
yeah, and it makes me actually think, we've talked a little bit about being a peacekeeper versus a peacemaker.
Yep.
And this is such an actionary idea that we are going to take action. We are going to participate in peaceful dialogue. And whereas somebody may have an opposing opinion or view that,
Yeah.
you know, that we don't share, and we can be a peacekeeper and turn around and walk away and have no conflict with that person, right? We're keeping
Yes.
peace,
But
we are not
still can't
making
exist
any
with them.
progress. Again, we're not making progress. And this is such, the film and the training that we did with Unify was such an actionary thing of making progress and moving ourselves into uncomfortable spaces to be changed a little bit, you know, and only in good ways. There was no negative feelings in any way. And I think that's what the film portrays, is that there were no negative feelings in, you know, between these people at the end. Hopefully that's
Even
not
though they might
a
not
huge
agree.
spoiler for people, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just, it's such a great example that there is still goodness out there, you know. And I think one of the things that you had said, it's not about resolution, but more about understanding. And here at MWEG, we're all about team humanity, right? And that's what we want. And so often we see memes or people or videos, there's people out there making videos of giving out and trying to help in the world. And I just think you always hear people say, well, this restores my faith in humanity. And I think this film and this exercise is one of those things that restores faith in humanity. And if we can just keep practicing that and putting that energy into the world, then I think we're doing good things.
Perfect. Okay, so now that you're dying to see this film, because I know you are, and you're dying to sit in a room for just a few minutes to learn some of these skills, we are working as hard as we can right now to bring that opportunity to you. And so the little teaser is, this summer, we have a really fantastic program that we are replicating from last summer, which is called our Simply Connect program. And let me just give you, we'll hear more about it next week, but briefly, just what I want to share is that when you're trying to help a democracy, or you're trying to help a group of people who are trying to live together in government or in systems where they have to learn to get along with one another and maybe sometimes give up control to people who get elected who aren't the people they would have chosen, you know, it's just a very really remarkable process that I think we have taken for granted as we've watched it really work well for a period of time in our nation's history, kind of post-civil rights. It is easy to forget that the foundation of that is trust, and the foundation of that is human connection. Absent those things, it's really, really hard to have a democracy work. And so every summer, we try at MWEG to have you as our members remember that the thing that you are, like, honestly, angels at, that you are so good at, that you're superheroes, whatever you want to call it, is that women are so good at providing that human connection at work, at home, in communities, all the different spaces in which you are, that form foundations of trust that let us build civic spaces. And so that's what our whole summer program is around, is sort of reminding you that things that you're doing every day, you can do them with a purpose, or you can think about them and do them in a way that engages with others. So as part of our Simply Connect program, one of the things that we are hoping this summer is to be able to bring to each of you the opportunity to see this film and to do it in a way that allows you to connect with others. So we're working it out now, but we hope that by the next week week or so, we'll be able to announce to you a time and a place when you can, a way that you can invite women into your home to watch this film with you, and then to host one of these conversations. And we should have had a couple of people that attended on here today to kind of give testimonials, because it was very interesting. There were several women who attended the movie who said out loud, I was a little bit anxious going in because this topic stresses me out. It's so contentious, it's so miserable. And I really, really left feeling elevated, happy, empowered, believing that good things are possible, because it really isn't a movie about that topic. It is a movie about coming together. And so you can feel very confident bringing it into your home and hosting women to watch it, because we promise that what will come out of that are better connections with the people that are sitting next to you. So we will be working hard to bring that to you. It'll be something that will be available to all MWEG members. And the good news is, if we can get this to work, if we can get enough of these house parties to happen where women are able to show this to their friends in their home, whether it's 3 or 5 or 10, however many people you can fit in your home to watch a movie. We hope in the fall to be able to replicate the in-person event potentially in other communities, in where we might be able to gather MWEG members and their friends and people that we organizationally want to work with to see the movie and to learn how to talk to each other. I just want to close by just saying that really our aim here, as in all things that we do, is to be peacemakers. There's a lot that we hope to accomplish in this organization in terms of our advocacy work, our work trying to improve law, protect democracy, and to create spaces that are conducive to the health and well-being of as many of God's children as possible. But how we do that matters to us. And how we do that here at MWEG is through peacemaking. There's what we do and there's how we do it. And how we do it is the peace, by bringing peace to situations of conflict, and creating true peace means that the outcomes are better, that people enjoy more agency, enjoy more opportunity, and live rich lives. It isn't just the absence of conflict. So this summer, we hope that you will take some time to be with us and to learn how to be better peacemakers. And we think that this opportunity will be a wonderful one for you to do just that. So stay tuned and we'll keep you posted.
Yes, thanks so much, Jen. Yes, so we are going to launch Simply Connect next week, or in 2 weeks, and we will talk about that here on the Grow, and we will put out the information will be available to our members. So watch for the email newsletter. If you're signed up for that, you can go and sign up for the newsletter through the MWEG.org website and on the portal, so you can get all that information and stay up to date with some of the things that we're working on. And also you can look in to see what areas of advocacy interest you that you may want to jump into with here at MWEG. So we invite anybody that is not a member that's watching our Grow today to join us. We welcome you all to be with us. So we will see you again in a couple weeks, and happy summer for everybody that's starting.
Happy Memorial Day. Have a good weekend.
Yes, thank you.